Alton Towers was the second amusement park I visited on my 2024 Europe tour, and it was also my most anticipated location of the entire trip. Located in Staffordshire, England, this fascinating resort destination has loads of unique attractions on offer, including 10 different roller coasters. What's crazy about Alton Towers' lineup is so many of these were first of its kind or broke some sort of record. And I'm not talking about height and speed barriers either. The park has to get incredibly creative because they aren't allowed to build above the tree line. But this has never been an obstacle for them because nearly all of the park's coasters have a claim to fame. In this video, I'm going to be ranking all 10 of the roller coasters at Alton Towers, as I got to try all of them across 2 days in the park, with the exception of Wicker Man. Gosh, don't even remind me. I know for a fact each of you watching have missed at least one highly anticipated ride when visiting a park for the first time, and in my case, it was the park's newest coaster, a Great Coasters International wooden coaster that opened in 2018. Believe it or not, this was because some moron decided to throw a vape at the track. Like, you cannot make this stuff up. Anyway, Wicker Man was a top 3 ride I was most looking forward to at the park, with it having a creative twisty layout and intimidating theming. We've all seen photos of that giant Wicker Man statue with all sorts of cool effects interacting with it. It's just amazing. It also looks like there's great moments of airtime and bank curves that seem really fun without being too out of control. To me, this seems like the type of ride that teeters on the family thrill line, so in that way, I highly doubt it would be my favorite or even second favorite coaster in the park. However, if I had to guess, I'd like to think it would land at number 3. I just didn't want to give a definitive answer without having ridden it, so really we're looking at a top 9 today. Let's go ahead and dive in. Number 9 is Octonauts Roller Coaster Adventure, a Zamperla Jr. coaster that opened in 2015. Just about every theme park has to have a roller coaster for kids, and although they may not be intended for my audience, that doesn't in any way mean they're bad. Granted, some junior coasters, including many from this manufacturer, are surprisingly rough or uncomfortable, so I wasn't sure what to expect from Octonauts. Fortunately, it was plenty smooth, and not only that, it had its own unique layout, which was a major surprise. Additionally, there was a decent effort to theme the attraction, which I really appreciated. It was clear Alton Towers didn't spare any expenses with this coaster. It's actually a pretty fun ride. Only reason it doesn't rank higher is because, as I said, it's very tame. Exactly what it's trying to accomplish, just nothing too exciting for a thrill seeker like myself. Number 8, Runaway Mine Train, a Mach Rides powered coaster, opened in 1992. One of Mach's most successful ride models, the powered coaster is a type of attraction that's powered by electricity as opposed to gravity. It still has some reliance on gravity, which you need to be considered a roller coaster in the first place, but what it means for the rider is there isn't any lift hill required to really get going. As a result, powered coasters also can't be too intense and are almost always used to fill in that family-friendly gap in a park's lineup. Considering this, Runaway Mine Train caught me quite a bit by surprise, as it's a fair bit larger and more aggressive than other attractions like it. I really liked how Alton Towers weaved the layout in and around rockwork and other themed elements. There's really not much wrong with this ride, even length isn't a problem since they send you through the course 2 separate times. But still, it has to rank towards the bottom because like Octonauts, other rides in the park are a lot more intense and a lot more dynamic. Number 7, Spinball Whizzer, a Mauer spinning coaster, opened in 2004. I'd consider myself a pretty big fan of this model. Mauer does some of the best family spinning coasters around. Despite this, Spinball Whizzer is one of their less impressive iterations for a variety of reasons. 1, it's a little shaky, with some uncomfortable mid-course brake runs, and 2, we didn't spin a whole lot unfortunately. I can imagine distributing your party's weight off balance could make for a more exciting ride than what we had, but still, there were also quite a few pros as well. For the most part, I really enjoyed the layout as it had some pretty steep elements like the first drop and the horseshoe turns. But aside from those moments, nothing here really stands out to me. A lot of that is me being a roller coaster enthusiast, so it's in my nature to compare, and in doing so, Spinball Whizzer isn't really all that impressive. But I also think a big part of that is the fact that it isn't exactly themed compared to virtually every ride on this list. The coaster, and the area that it's in, could really use some upgrades to make it fit more seamlessly into the rest of the park. Spinball is not bad by any means, just a little generic and unoriginal, which is what keeps it from placing higher. Number 6, Oblivion, a Bolliger and Mabillard dive coaster, opened in 1998. The first high-intensity ride to make my list, Oblivion was the prototype dive machine, and unfortunately this comes across pretty obviously. Reason it's so low is because the layout is legitimately a drop and a turn into the brake run. But I think those who already have the expectation it's going to be a painfully short ride will enjoy it more, since they'll be focused on what the coaster does do well. Namely, the drop, which is absolutely phenomenal and easily the best in the park. Despite its height of just 65 feet, Alton Towers dug a tunnel underground which extends the drop an additional 115 feet, which doesn't even sound real. It's also fun emerging back into the daylight as your eyes have to adjust, and you're going so fast, in the moment you're kind of left wondering where that speed even came from. By far this is the weakest dive coaster from manufacturer B&M, but ironically, maybe has the best drop of all of them. So in that way, it's a one-trick pony that does its one trick very well. I wish it were longer, and I mean a lot longer, but it is fun for what it is. I just couldn't find it in me to rank it higher when I can probably hold my breath longer than its entire ride time. Number 5, Galactica, a Bolliger and Mabillard flying coaster, opened in 2002. Where Oblivion was the original dive machine, Galactica, formerly known as Air, was the first flying coaster. This is a roller coaster type that positions riders in a prone position on their stomachs. Usually these style of rides go very high to make you feel like you're, well, flying, but Galactica suffers from a short height that really takes away from the intimidation factor. That said, it does do something that very few flying coasters do, and that's flip you out onto your back for an elongated period of time. That's easily my favorite part of the ride just for how weird and unconventional it feels. There's also some other fun inversions and bank curves, but all in all, this is closer to a family coaster than one might think. It's also not particularly well themed and could use an upgrade similar to Spinball Whizzer. Mostly, what's keeping it from a higher spot is its lack of height relative to other flying coasters, and most of all, its short track length. It isn't painfully short like Oblivion, but it also doesn't pack in the length that a major roller coaster should in my opinion. Galactica is definitely a fun experience, but flawed in many ways. Number 4, Rita, an Intamin launch coaster, opened in 2005. A rather underrated ride, Rita tends to receive a fair bit of hate amongst British coaster enthusiasts, but I found it quite fun. Sure, it's incredibly short, that's definitely my biggest criticism. However, what it packs in is all very enjoyable and very intense. The initial launch is extremely punchy, using hydraulics to blast riders from 0 to 61.1 miles per hour in just 2.5 seconds. Following this are some forceful turns and airtime-packed twisted hills that accumulate in some nice variation. I will say I'm not a very big fan of its restraints, as I think they limit your enjoyment in said forces, but that's more nitpicky than it is a major con. My only big issue, like I said, is its minuscule length, but that's not bad for a coaster often torn apart by the enthusiast community over there. Rita is a very nice ride that I'd certainly recommend if you like a good adrenaline kick. Number 3, 13, an Intamin family coaster which opened in 2010. Similar story here, those whose home park is Alton Towers seem to bash 13 for what could have been instead of appreciating it for what it offers. Having little to no expectations, I for one loved it for many different reasons. Specifically, the multi-dimensional ride technology allows for more dynamic layouts than what would have been possible otherwise, and this includes things like a backwards launch and my personal favorite, a drop track. These moments are complemented by exceptional theming too, which is both creepy and immersive. Same with the queue line, it's very nicely decorated and I think that really adds to the experience in this case. There are parts of 13 that could afford to be longer, but that's not as much of a complaint for me as it is for others. I wouldn't say I have any big time criticisms for this ride, it's just really fun. You all should have seen this from a mile away, but I can't place it higher when it's pretty tame. A spectacular family coaster, but a family coaster nonetheless. Number 2, Smiler, a Gerstlauer Infinity coaster opened in 2013. I was lucky to get a single ride on this coaster at the tail end of my first day in the park, because it was closed the entire second. I got to try it in the front row, and I'm glad for that, as I believe it allowed me to take in the ride's elements more so. Smiler's hallmark is it's got more inversions than any other roller coaster, and they're almost evenly divided between 2 lift hills. 14 times you'll flip upside down, and aside from an element or two, I didn't find it overly nauseating. That said, it is very intense, so you've got to be really into that if you want to appreciate this coaster. One other thing about the Smiler is although it's absolutely an inversion-focused experience, there are 2 surprising airtime moments to switch things up when the layout might start to feel a little stale. There's only so many ways you can invert riders, so a lot of these rolls and loops can blend together and feel repetitive. Even with the airtime, I can't deny that this is a repetitive layout, but my biggest complaint with it is I just wish it were smoother. While I don't think it's as painful as some make it out to be, it does rattle its way through the layout, which adds an unnecessary layer of intensity to a ride that already might be too much for some people. And Gerstlauer has proven that they can build smooth coasters, so to me it's a shame Smiler isn't one of them. Still, I have overwhelmingly positive things to say about this ride, and I'd argue for how fascinating it is with all of its records, you might want to make it your top priority at Alton Towers. But, coming in at number 1, give me Nemesis Reborn, a Bolliger & Mabillard inverted coaster, opened in 1994. Before we talk about the layout, forces, and all that fun stuff, the coaster made its grand reopening in 2024, that's where it gets the Reborn part of its name, and with it came a full retracking and plenty of theming upgrades. So much so, actually, that I now think Nemesis Reborn is one of the most themed coasters outside of a Disney or Universal park. Even the track color scheme adds to the immersion, I've never seen anything like it. But the impression it makes is one thing, how it rides is another, so does it live up to the hype? For me, absolutely. I got off this thing and loved it maybe even a little more so than I expected to. The most shocking thing about this coaster is it's only got a max height of 42 feet. There's kiddie coasters taller than that. But what Alton Towers did to compensate was they dug trenches to extend the height from highest to lowest track segments 60 whole feet. This is mind-blowing on-ride, especially due to how compact they had to make all the elements as a result. You'll find yourself graying out from all of the positive G-forces, and the near-miss moments are extraordinary. There's 4 great whippy inversions and some tight turns. What's not to love here? I think the biggest complaint most might give Nemesis Reborn is it's a little on the short side, but I think with the limitations Alton Towers had to work with, it's impressive it's as long as it is in the first place. For an inverted coaster, I can't really knock it for anything in particular, and that's why it ranks as my favorite roller coaster at Alton Towers. If you've been to the park yourself, let me know in the comments what your favorites are, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to Coaster Dash for more content like this in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.